Hello, everyone. I know there was a good number of people in the waiting room already, 1 minute or 2 minutes even before we started. So that's Sui's punctuality. So glad to see that level of engagement. Welcome, everyone. We'll give a few seconds so that people have the time to join and stuff. I'm joining from New York. Christian, who will jump in a second as well. If you can leave in the chat where you're joining in from today, that'd be fantastic. New York, not too bad weather, a bit rainy, but most of the snow is Georgia. That's so cool. Michigan, Ohio, Florida, definitely warmer. Texas, good. Denver, that's fantastic. So very broad audience. This is how we like it, Christian, right?
Exactly. Yeah, great to see.
Awesome. Well, let's kick off. And very excited to be here in our second masterclass with Christian Banik. We're gonna be covering everything you need to do in order to turn your budget into a truly impactful operational plan. I'm your host, Julio Martinez, the co-founder and CEO of Abacum, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all. I'm incredibly excited for today's session, the second of the three master classes we put together with Kristen. And the agenda for today is particularly exciting. Today is going to be about 45 minutes. We can make it a bit longer if time permits. And we're going to be breaking this down around the insights as to how to run your monthly business review. It's important. If we take a step back, we want to have operational impact and be, having finance teams becoming an agent of performance and accountability within the organization. The monthly business review is a critical, and it takes many forms and different names, but it's a critical instrument to do that. And I'm super excited that Christian is gonna share with us the best practice. What is it really? But best practices to make it impactful and engagement and put finance in the driver's seat for the organization. So nobody better than Christian to do this, and I'm gonna be welcoming you, but you need no introduction, but still, I'm going to do it. So Christian Abadik is an FP&A expert with over a decade of leadership experience at multinational companies and fast-growing tech startups. Today, Christian directs the FP&A certificate program at the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania and shares his insights through his own training programs as the founder of the FP&A Prep and on LinkedIn. Over 30,000 finance professionals and business leaders who subscribe to his weekly newsletter, FP&A Tuesday, and I'm one of them. You can discover more about his work at fbaprep.com. Cool. It's fantastic. Let's kick off. Christian, warmest welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Hey, let's kick off with a short pool of questions and see what the audience has to say. We want to hear from you and to make this a bit more interactive. Are you currently leading the monthly business review process at your company? And the second question, what are you looking to learn the most today? That is going to be helpful for us to guide the conversation. Good. Take your time to vote. Something I don't want us to forget is that we'll allow for Q&A time at the end of the session. So we'll be running this. If I see some question that is relevant to what Christian is saying at the precise moment, I'll probably jump in and moderate a little bit, but probably most of the questions will be tackled towards the end of the session in some Q&A time. So don't let Christian leave without answering your question, right? I think it's a great opportunity to have Christian with us today, sharing his amazing insights. So please, get that done. Good. Awesome. Do we have already the answers from the pool? Okay, well, maybe we need to wait a little bit more, but in any case, we can start kicking off. Look, Kristen, maybe let's kick off with the basics, probably, if you want. We spoke a little bit about the monthly business review, great instrument, but what should effective management reports accomplish, right? And what are the objectives of that monthly business review?
Yeah, it's a great place to start with. And the way I think about this is there are basic, intermediate, and advanced objectives of financial reports. Let me share my screen here so it's a bit easier to follow. So when it comes to the basic reports, you have, of course, you have to inform the investors and the leadership team about your company's performance. You have to track business performance overall, both the financial metrics and the operational metrics. And you want to provide a forward-looking outlook. In what shape or form you're doing that, you want to have a forecast. So that's clear, right? I'm sure if you're doing financial reporting, management reporting, you're doing these three already. But there's more that your report should achieve. In terms of intermediate objectives, you want to detect issues early. Ideally, early enough that you can still do something about it before the all-important quarter close, right? Or year-end close. And that means that you need to be close to the issues. And ideally, you also have a way to see the data, sales data, other important data points on a day-to-day basis or on a weekly basis, rather than just once a month after the month-end close. You want to identify risks and opportunities. We'll talk a bit more about this later, how to do that. The key here is that you are making concrete recommendations about what the company should be doing, rather than just flagging something at a high level. And in order to do that, we have to separate signal from noise, because most companies have a lot of data to sift through, and not every data point tells a story every month. And we'll talk about storytelling later today as well. And that's one of our core roles as finance leaders, is to say, what's the signal and what are data points that can and should be ignored at this point. But there's more you can do with your reporting. You can use them to set the strategy. Because, the old adage that what gets measured gets managed still holds true. And when we shine a light on a specific issue that, based on our analysis, is really impactful to the company, that can have a real impact on strategy, especially if we take it to a point where we can confidently say, based on our analysis, our current strategy isn't working as intended. Here's what I recommend we do instead. You also want to use your reporting to create accountability. The thing is, if you don't have, so what accountability means is you can point to what's causing an issue. That's not finger pointing to a person, it's pointing to what's causing an issue. And if you don't focus on accountability, then eventually management reporting becomes meaningless, because you can't really put it into action if you don't get down to the level of what's working, what's not working. And ideally, you use your reporting to show scenarios that enable agile decision making. Ideally, you have a fully fleshed out scenario planning process that allows the leadership team to make decisions now about what we should be doing if a certain issue happens. And then you have the time to prepare, get the wheels into motion, so that when the best case or the worst case scenario happens, you're prepared. And as a finance leader, it's our job to make sure that this gets done, and this gets done thoroughly. Now, how you can use this is, the next time you do a financial presentation, look at what the objectives are, and then look at this list and look at what the objectives could be, right? And see whether maybe you want to tweak your slides a bit to make sure you're hitting some of those intermediate and advanced objectives.
Kristen, thank you so much. That was a fantastic slide. Thank you so much for sharing the insights. Love how you guide us to what it means to make progress in that conversation and until up to a point where, hey, you're really driving a strategy and you're facilitating an agile decision-making process through sophisticated scenario planning. So love it. Thank you so much. Let's move to the second question. By the way, this is to the audience. Again, feel free to drop your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A section. We want to have Kristen's insights, and we want this to be meaningful for you. Our second question that we've prepared, that we believe is very relevant, is what are the major reports that an effective FP&A team should share on a monthly basis?
Yeah, so there is a common issue you run into when it comes to reporting, and that is that the leaders you're working with want to know everything as soon as possible, right? Month-end close is done on the same day. On the next day, people want to know what expectations were met, what weren't met, how do we compare versus the forecast versus the budget, why is that the case? They want to know everything immediately. And that's can be quite challenging. And that's actually something you need to push back on and do it in a specific way. And I'll talk about how to do that in a second. Because the thing is, you need to carve out time in the month to do deep analysis, to actually look at, okay, what are the root causes for the variances I'm seeing? What happened in the business and what should we be doing differently going forward? And you can't do that on day 3 of the month. You just can't. You don't have enough time to talk to people, to look at operational metrics. So how do you deal with the challenge that you also can't just ignore what leaders are saying and just wait 2 weeks and give them the report then? So what do you do, right? And what I've found works really well to address this challenge is to share 2 different reports. You share a flash report at the beginning of the month as soon as possible, and then a management review report later in the month. And so what this looks like is, okay, the flash report that you share on 1 to 3 days after the close, as soon as possible, answers the what's going on. And I'll share a specific example of what a flash report looks like in a moment. But the second report you share 10 to 15 days after the close, so sometime in the second half of the month, and that's the performance review. That's where you share a detailed analysis of the why and the so what. So you go deeper. You look at what are root causes, what do we need to do differently, what are risks and opportunities. And you need the time to do that because you want to talk to budget owners. You want to look at maybe contracts, maybe look at different systems, different data. And you probably also want to have a meeting in addition to just a report where you discuss with the leaders, what are we going to do based on these insights? And to go a little bit deeper on this, so the purpose of the flash report is to share how actual results compare to expectations. Okay, what it means is you compare your actual results to your prior year, to your forecast, to your budget, and the idea is to flag surprises. Right? If there's one thing that every leader I work with have in common is that they don't like surprises. Right? So you need to share those things that are going against expectations, against what you said a month earlier. You need to share those as soon as possible, because then the idea is that then the different departments have the marching orders, right? They know that, okay, there's an issue with social media advertising. It's not performing as well as we thought it would. Let's look at what's happening, right? Let's look at what's going on. And then we report back at the performance review meeting 10 to 15 days after the close. And when you're structuring that flash report, it's important that I would recommend a balanced scorecard approach. Some of you may be familiar with this. for example, there's a financial perspective, a customer perspective, internal perspective, and employee perspective. I actually think it's easier if I show you a concrete example of what that flash report may look like. So here is an example. You start with the financials, right? You look at your main KPIs, could be revenue, EBITDA, free cash flow, gross margin. You show how does that compare to the budget, to the forecast, to the prior year. Maybe you even have a bridge where you show, okay, what are all the ups and downs that impacted your EBITDA. You can have some graphs as well. But if you take a look at the comments, you'll see that they're fairly shallow. They don't really explain what's driving things, what's the story behind the numbers. They just state the numbers, right? The facts that you can get immediately once the month-end close is done from your financial systems. So those are the financials. We also have a sales perspective. There you can look at sales by region, by product, average price, whatever makes sense for your company. And again, it's all about speed here. Ideally, you have all of this set up in a way that you can refresh it instantly. This is where FP&A tools are really, really helpful, because then the flash report is essentially just a press of the button and then some comments that share whatever you already know and summarize what the numbers tell you. Beyond sales, we also want to talk about operations and a balanced scorecard approach. So here we have metrics that you can't get from your ERP system. This is where you need to have access to the system that's your cross-functional partners are using. In this case, Pear is a company that manufactures physical goods. So things like inventory turnover, production cycle time can make a big difference. That's why we are reporting on that here. But those metrics will be different for every industry and even for every company, because it really comes down to what has the biggest impact on your performance. Then we have headcount as well, the employee perspective. And then that's the structure of this flash report. And then when it comes to the performance review, so I'll take it back here. When it comes to the performance review, this is where you want to go deep. You want to provide in-depth explanations of the business performance and make sure that no stone is left unturned. And these slides usually, you wouldn't automate them. You would get them from, you would have to prepare them manually each month, because there's a different thing you highlight every month.
Christian, thank you so much.
Ulu, I can't hear you for some reason. One moment. I'm not sure if it's me.
I think you froze. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, it's an issue on my end. One moment, I will try to fix it.
No worries.
I can hear you again, sorry.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. It was great, and I think it prompted really meaningful questions from the audience. So I'm tempted to pick up some and start get the flow going, and don't wait until the end. I think for instance, from Jacob, what happens if the flash report and the performance review are materially different? There will be intense review from the C-suite.
Great question. So how you avoid that is the numbers shouldn't be different, right? Your actual shouldn't change, because you prepare the flash report when you have the final numbers for the previous month when the close is over. Your budget, your comparators don't change, right? Budget forecast. So the numbers really won't change between the flash report and the performance review. And you want to make sure that you're really approaching it in a way that the flash report doesn't have any any insights yet, any recommendations, because for that you need the time to really dig into things, and you share those in the performance review. So in other words, in the flash report, you only share the facts that you have immediately in front of you, that you can get from your FP&A tool or your ERP tool or other systems. And so that's why there won't be any material differences in the numbers between the two reports.
Cool. Thank you, Christian. I think a question here from Felipe, but we can take this one. How many days after the first day of the month is the close, right? And hey, at least in my experience, what I've seen here is best in class is gonna be 3 to 5 days, right? And then most companies are more in the 10th day of the month, potentially even 2 weeks into the month, which is starting to be a bit lagging. I think the flash report is super meaningful because it gives you that early information. We've seen some of our customers even doing some pacing report or pre-closing report, so ahead of closing, and maybe you've just closed revenue, right? So you want to issue a report on what matters most on the second day of the month, right? On the third, instead of waiting until the proper accounting closing. So the companies do this in different ways, but Christian, I'm curious about what you've seen.
Yeah, exactly. We also got the question in the chat, what do you do when you have a longer close? I mean, the first thing I would do is focusing on reducing the time to close the books. 15 days is not good, by any measure. 3 to 5 really is best in class, and where companies with the current tools that we have right now should be able to get to. But then if that's not impossible, not possible, I 100% agree with what you said. There could be multiple flash reports. You report whatever you have, when you have it, and when you know it's final. So sales could be done on day 1, but maybe the full P&L will only be done on day 10. So that's how you can approach it.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, divide and conquer, right? And stay relevant ahead of time so that you can show those early signals of what you need to address. I think Lucas is also sharing a very interesting question. How long have you been operating a flash report performance review system under, what's the observable impact after implementing the framework, right?
Yeah, so I'm lucky in that I worked at companies that have a lot of experience with this. At Unilever is 120 years old. They had a lot of time to refine the processes. They've been having the system for a really long time. And same with Squarespace. Squarespace is a website builder, tech company, medium-sized company. They've been around for about 15 years. And when I joined, they already had this process in place where you share a flash report at the beginning, and then later on the performance review. That's really the best practice I see, in all the companies I worked at, which is why, I'm sharing it here.
Cool. Thank you so much. There are a number of questions going on. We'll save some of them for towards the end. Maybe one that is interesting is some tool examples available at press of a button, as you mentioned, and curious to hear.
So there are many tools available that help you create that. There are tools that are targeting different parts of the market. Definitely important to do your research there. Abacom is a great tool to do that, right? Really, everything about that. So Abacom actually does all of this. It can create all your standard reporting at the press of the button because it connects to your systems in the cloud, and that's definitely possible with today's tools.
Very recent. Maybe the last one, and a few people are asking for a performance report example. I think your flash report created fans here. So if at some point in time, maybe in the next webinar, maybe we can follow up on that. It's been super impactful.
Yeah, actually, we'll talk a bit more about the performance review in this webinar. I don't have an example because, as you will see, it has to be different for every company and every industry. But we'll talk a bit more about this soon.
Yeah, hopefully now, as we get into our third question, we'll ease some of these questions. Maybe not a particular example because it really varies, as you said, company to company. But there is a common structure, right, that makes those performance reviews very successful. So this is the third question precisely. What makes a well-structured monthly business review deck? Yeah,
exactly. So there is a structure that I highly recommend you follow. and it has three components. The first component is what I call the story slides. So that's tells the story of what matters right now. These are probably just 3 to 5 slides. It starts with an executive summary where you highlight, okay, what are the issues that you want inputs from the leadership team. That's different every month. The second part of that monthly review deck is the standard reports. So that's where you basically go much deeper than what you had in the flash report. You show performance by region, you show performance by top 10 customers, you show different cuts of every department. And that's something you share ahead of time. And that's where basically every leader can go through and they can see, okay, how are my metrics for my company, for my department doing? They can review that. And then if they have any questions, they can bring it to the meeting. And ideally, these are also automated as much as possible through FP&A tools. And then you have an appendix. So the appendix, it's a bit of a controversial topic because some companies and also some finance teams I worked at overdo it a bit with the appendix. So I would not recommend that you try to preempt every question that people could possibly ask and create 2 slides for each question ahead of time. I know that it looks very impressive, right? If you pull this off, if you're in the meeting, someone asks a question, you can say, oh, actually, I already have a slide for that. But it can also waste a lot of time and when you're preparing slides that no one will ever review. So what's important here is you need to know your audience. You need to know, what do the different leaders care about? And what I have often seen is that some department heads have some very specific head issues that they really care about, but that aren't as relevant for the entire company to be part of the story slides or even the standard reports. And those, you can include in the appendix if it doesn't take too long to refresh. So let me talk a bit more about those story slides, because that's in some ways the most important part of your performance review. And this is where you share your deep analysis, you share your root causes, and you answer the questions that you raised in your flash report, right? When you share the flash report at the beginning of the month, there are a lot of open questions. Why didn't we hit our lead generation goals in marketing? Why did the sales team have fewer conversions from a demo to a paid, to a trial, let's say? And this is where you share all the work you've done in those 2 weeks, where you talk to people, where you analyze the data, and you share the root causes and what you recommend the company should be doing going forward. And also important to mention here is that you shouldn't just have the meeting and that's where people see all of this for the first time. I recommend that you share a pre-read. And the pre-read has the purpose that leaders can go through the material, review the standard reports especially, and then come prepared to the meeting. So come prepared either with questions or with concrete action steps on how they can implement what you're suggesting. That's super important because otherwise, if you don't do a pre-read, you're forced to go through the entire deck in the review meeting. There won't be a lot of time for discussion and questions. And probably there will be people in the room who already know some of the stuff you're saying. And so it will be not the best use of their time. So do the pre-read. The thing is with the pre-read, if you've ever tried this before, you may run into situations where people didn't read it, right? So especially maybe sometimes busy leaders. And I've certainly ran into this before, but some companies, so this is really where you need to have a strong process. Some companies do a really good job at avoiding this. They see the importance for even very senior people to read the pre-read. So for example, at Unilever, it's mandatory to share a pre-read, but then also for everyone who receives the pre-read, they had to put questions into a Google Sheet that was shared with everyone. And then if someone didn't put at least one question in there, even the senior leaders, the general manager, the SVP, the most senior person in the meeting would be informed about this, and it doesn't look good. Right. So all the heads of departments had to not just read the pre-read, but even, submit comments and questions ahead of time. And that doesn't just force people to read the pre-read. It also makes it easier for the finance leaders because they can prepare. They know what some questions will be. And then when you have the actual performance review at the end of the month, it's going to be a very good use of people's time because everyone is informed, and you don't even have to show most of the slides. You probably just show the executive slide, 2 or 3 story slides, and then it's all about decision making. So that's the gold standard for a business review. I know it can take some time to get there, but yeah, I would highly recommend you set this as a goal.
That's an amazing goal. Thank you so much for sharing, Christian. That's fantastic. I think in our experience as well, sharing the pre-read at least 48 hours in advance, right? So for people to have reasonable bandwidth to go through it. And actually, what's in it for you? Well, you probably will get, as Christian mentioned, some questions in advance, right? Which in turn will make you better prepared to be successful in that meeting and control the meeting, don't get derailed, and actually know some of the answers. So yes, a big fan of what Christian is highlighting here about the pre-read. Keith, I like your question here about, and I think it connects with what we're going to discuss now, Christian, but how do you minimize redundant reporting? How do you minimize redundant reporting and prioritize the most critical information?
Yeah, so we'll actually talk about this in a moment, and I can share some best practices, but the starting point is that you need to know who you're presenting to. You need to know, what do they care about? What do they need to make decisions? What are the decisions that they are currently pondering? What are the challenges that they are facing? And then you can tailor your reporting to what they specifically are looking for, and keep the rest in the standard reports.
That's a great transition, actually.
Yep.
Because I think, and I want to love this part. I think Christian has something very special prepared for everyone. What are the common issues you have when reviewing performance review decks of finance teams you train?
Yeah, so what I would like to do now is actually have this a little bit as an interactive part of this webinar. So what I will do now is I will share a report that is not great, that's really not very good, that needs a lot of improvement. And what I would like to do is I would like to hear from you in the chat. What would you change? So take a look at this report. Again, this is not a good report. It's not an example of how you should do your reporting in your story slides, in your monthly performance review. So what would you change? Patricia says, remove the $K in each row. Yeah, it can be a bit distracting to repeat that. It doesn't look as good. Good. What else? Alana says the commentary isn't specific. Yeah, specifically, actually, it just more or less repeats what the table is saying, right? Okay, a few people are saying, show the percent variance. Thank you, Anush, Nessa. Yeah, the variance. Yeah, Kim. The thing is, so we have the numbers here, but you never want people to do math in the head, even if it's very simple math, because when they do math, you lose them. They won't be listening to you. So we should definitely have a variance column here that shares that. What else? Use charts. Okay, we'll talk about it in a moment. Yeah, so this uses a table. We'll talk about visualizations in a moment. So where are the budget projections? I call it the plan here, 2025 plan, but some companies call it budget, some companies call it operating plan. No why behind the numbers. Yeah, very good. What's the issue? Is there anything here that you would remove? And I don't think I'm seeing that in the comments yet, because I would argue that there's too much on the slide. Remove the noise. Exactly, Alexander. What's noise here? what can be and should be removed other than the $K? What can be removed? Headcount in line. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Kamran. So the thing is, when you look at sales headcount, it's in line. Actuals are in line with plan. So there's actually nothing really going on here that points to this helping explain May sales actuals, right? It's even a little bit higher than 2024, even though, sales actuals are favorable. So I would not include sales headcount here. Anything else that should be removed? Yeah, Alexander says marketing slightly higher. Same thing with marketing, right? It's slightly higher. And in addition, I would argue that the marketing line here probably raises more questions than it solves. Because a question you might be getting here is, well, we're spending in line, but maybe we're spending marketing dollars on the wrong things, right? Maybe social media isn't performing as well anymore as it used to, so we need to do more search ads or more podcast ads, and that's something you have to be extremely mindful of when you're preparing the financials, that your presentation doesn't get derailed, that you don't get questions that you're not yet prepared to answer. So compare this report to this slide. It's the same scenario, the same numbers. What immediately jumps out at you is something that's better on this slide? What jumps out at you at being better on this slide? There are a few things. The variances. Yeah, thank you, Kim. So we can actually see the variance versus plan and the chart. Yeah. So what this chart does is it simplifies it, right? It shows which items we should really care about. Darren mentions the colors. Yeah, so our eye immediately gets drawn to that red box. What's that? Okay, organic sales are lower. Got it. There's also a green box. It's smaller than the red box, so it's not fully offsetting, but promos seem to be going a bit better. Leila says we added the Y. Yeah, if you look at the second comment, decline worse than expected due to lower than planned organic sales. I would argue that this is still not really enough of the Y, though. Color takes on what you should be focusing on. Alexander said the percent puts the number into perspective. Yeah, thank you. Great that you noticed this. So you see in the gray columns, I also have the percentage year over year. And that's especially helpful for busy executives, maybe who aren't as close to the numbers as you are, to say, okay, this is the magnitude of the change. This is why, this is actually a lot and we should care about this. Good. So really, the difference here is signal versus noise. That's the takeaway. When you think about your slides, think about how can you remove things that may not help you tell the story, or that maybe can trigger questions that you're not ready to answer just yet. So signal versus noise. But you can make this report even better. Take a look at this slide, and what do you notice that's different? The visualization on the right didn't change. It's exactly the same still, but the comments changed. So what do you notice here? What's different? The why, yes, we go much deeper into the why. It's a concrete action plan. Yeah, the title. So here, the finance team did their homework. They digged into the numbers and they found out what's actually going on. They realized that there's a specific customer who caused the majority of this gap. And they even took it a step further. They called the customer, or they asked sales to call the customer, and they confirmed that it was just a delay to June. And they recommend the next step, which is focus on improving communication, so this doesn't come as a surprise when a customer changes their order pattern. And also see the use of the headline. The headline, I would argue, is often an underutilized space because it's where everyone looks at first, right? In some sense, it's the prime real estate of your slide. And by using that to tell the story, the key takeaway, you make sure that everyone gets the story. And here the story is, well, client A's order delay caused sales decline. You don't have to put May 2025 sales actuals there because that's clear, right? That's clear from the context that that's what we're talking about. So the difference here is insights versus raw data. If you're just saying, well, organic sales dropped more than expected, that's not a real insight because there's nothing the company can do about it, right? There are a million things that could be wrong. But if you dig deeper and you find out that there's one customer that's driving it, then there's a clear next step. Someone can call the customer, someone can figure out what's going on. Is this just a delay? Is that maybe a decline that we have to reflect in the forecast? And so this is how you get to the insights, by keeping digging until you can point to one or two or maybe three concrete actions. But you can improve this even further. So take a look at this. I didn't change the comments. I didn't change the graph. I just added the box in the lower left corner. Now, granted, the slide gets a bit busy now. In reality, I probably would have this on a different slide. But to illustrate the point, I put this there. Why do you think I put these metrics there in the lower left corner? What are they trying to accomplish? Or does anyone know what these metrics are called? Indicators, KPIs, operational KPIs. So those are leading indicators. They're telling you something about where revenue, a lagging indicator, will likely move in the future. And thank you, Patrick. So Patrick says the overall health of the business is actually good. Yeah, because the thing is, what really is the story here? What is the thing that we're communicating? It's not just that client A's order delay caused sales decline. Because in the end, what leaders really want to know is this an issue that I should be worried about, or is it fine, right? And we are basically saying here on the slide, everything is fine. Don't you worry about the miss in sales in May because it's just a delay. The vast majority of this is just a delay. We will make up for it. No risk to the quarterly or annual target. And what I have in the box here mostly supports this. It's because website traffic is up, leads are up. That's all pointing towards that what we're saying is true, that the business is fine, right? That things are going okay. And, this was just a delay. Now, I put customer support tickets here, which are up by 70%, which is actually not a good thing, right? If your customer support tickets are up, maybe there's an issue with your product quality. And I put this there so I can make the point that you also shouldn't cherry pick, right? Because you can pick from a lot of operational metrics. If you always just pick the ones that support your story, that's not showing the full picture. Business is rarely black and white, right? There's usually areas of gray, areas that are doing well, areas that are not doing well. So what I would say here is, look, we looked at leading indicators. They're pointing towards that we are on a good track, that this indeed is just a delay. But I wanted to flag that customer support tickets are concerning, and we'll take this as a next step. We look into this, do an analysis, and see, is there anything we need to be worried about in terms of product quality, or is this just noise? Is this just a random spike in call volume? Okay. So that's a quick primer on how do you structure the business review? How do these reports look? How should they look like? And what are some common issues?
Kristen, that was amazing. So I love how you walk us through from what is something on the poor side to something stellar. Really a big fan of how you did it, and actually of your last point on leading indicators. This is what matters to the business leader, right? So revenue is always going to be lagging. We need to go deep into the why and get deep into those operational KPIs that really track very close real business performance. So thank you for this super illustrative example. It was awesome. We have a lot of questions. We'll park some of them and tackle them towards the end. So I think we have 15 more minutes. We have something else prepared that I think is going to be amazing for it's a very common question we get. Does it always need to be slides or are there different ways finance leaders can and should communicate their findings?
Great point. So we talked a lot about slides, but not every company is really slide driven. So a well-known example is Amazon, right? Jeff Bezos, over a decade ago, he said that there should not be, he thinks slides are not an instrument that really is helpful for deep thought. And he wants to establish a culture that's based on one-pagers. So a friend of mine started at Amazon about a year ago, and he was surprised when he was in his first big meeting because for the first 10 minutes, everyone was just head down reading a pre-read for the meeting. So that's how Amazon deals with that. You have to share a written summary of the findings, of the insights, and then at the beginning of each meeting, everyone reads it. Probably also because they ran into the issue that leaders don't do the pre-read. So they say, okay, I'm not even trying to make you read it beforehand. We just reserve the first 10 minutes of the meeting so everyone gets on the same page. I worked at P&G. I started my career at P&G, consumer goods company. There also, our SVP said he's not going to make any investment decision unless it's presented to him on one piece of paper. That's stricter than Amazon. Amazon memos are usually 4 pages. P&G, everything had to fit on one piece of paper. And that's to force people to really think things through and boil it down to the essential arguments for why we should move forward with a decision. And the way the P&G one-pager looks is you start with an idea summary. What are you going to propose? One sentence. You let the cat out of the bag right away, right? There is no hiding. You immediately say what you want the company to do. You share a perspective, some background, only as much as necessary. Again, you don't have a lot of space. You share how it works, clear and concise, without leaving out information, but also make it as concise as possible. Key benefits and next steps. Now, there are pros and cons when it comes to one-pagers versus slides, of course. There's not, one-pagers are also not a one-size-fits-all. When it comes to the advantages, really, it's all about the fact that it forces you to slow down and really summarize, and then the writing process helps you evolve your thinking. At P&G, I helped write a lot of one-pagers, and it happened more than once that we were halfway through the first draft and we realized, actually, maybe we need to change our recommendation because now thinking this through more deeply, more slowly, we missed a few things. It's also more efficient use of meeting time because if people use the one-pagers, read the one-pagers beforehand, then you don't need to spend 80% of the meeting going through slides that maybe some people have seen already before. And it's also easier reference post-launch. So what I mean with that is if you do, and I hope you do, post-launch evaluations where you go back and you see what actual results compared to what we thought the project would be, or the investment business case would be. If you have 3 50-page PowerPoint presentations with 3 different versions, it can take a long time to find that original assumption, but in a one-pager, it's much easier to find. But there are also disadvantages. So it's harder to show the thought process. You have to let the cat out of the bag. You can't slowly walk someone to a conclusion. And it's harder to control the message. And this is why I think they're not frequently used, for example, for board presentations. Because in a board presentation, maybe you have some bad results to report, but you first want to walk people through slowly all the reasons why you did everything you could, and it definitely wasn't your fault that the company is in the position they are in right now. And only then you reveal what the bad result is. In a one pager, you can't do that. And so what I would recommend is where one pagers really shine is when you want a decision internally. You make a recommendation, you build a financial model about an investment or about a headcount increase or whatever it is. And I would highly recommend experiment with using a one pager to communicate your reasoning for that decision, because it's more efficient and it helps you think through issues better than PowerPoint does. But on the other hand, slides work really well for detailed performance reviews like the one I've mentioned, where you have to look at many different angles of the business, and external high stakes presentations like investor reviews or board meetings. So really the food for thought is here, probably you're not using one pages a lot, the standard is still slides, but think about where are situations where you could be using them to save time during meetings and to better prepare your business partners.
Kristen, thank you so much. Big fans of memos and a narrative experience. I think writing clarifies thought a lot. So thank you for sharing best practices from amazing companies. We have a number of questions. So, and we have more questions prepared for you, but I want to make sure we cover some of or most of the questions from the audience. So let me kick off with a number of them. I've been recapping some of them and trying to have something a bit more structured. Hey, what are some of the proven frameworks or methods for ensuring that your annual budget translates into daily operational goals or weekly operational goals rather than remaining purely a financial exercise?
Yes, that's a great question. And really what it comes down to is the depth, the level of detail you put into the budget when you first prepare it. Ideally, that needs to be a cross-functional process. It can't be just finance preparing the budget. It can't be just finance consolidating inputs either. It has to be a process where there's a bottom up, a top down. We actually talked about this quite a bit in the last webinar that we did together. And because in the end, it's all about buy-in. You can only get the cross-functional teams' involvement when you're doing the business review and when you're reviewing actuals versus budget, if they see their numbers reflected. So if you're using their inputs and they were fully bought in when you first put the budget together. If it was just a pure finance exercise, there won't be much help in the business review, in the analysis of why are we off, right? Because they don't recognize the numbers. And so that's a big factor here.
Thank you, Christian. Patricia is asking an interesting question that I think can clarify a couple of things we've talked about monthly closing, essentially. When you say the close is done, say in the 5 days into the month to present the flash report, and that then within the 10 days, the performance review is done, what is being done between the 5th and the 10th of the month? Would that be building the analysis and writing the review? So maybe, Christian, help us here clarify the timelines, right? So, okay,
yeah.
Performance review. What happens?
Yep. So the first step I would do is, so the flash report flags some issues, right? Some things that are where actuals are different from forecast, and the corresponding departments would need to figure out what's going on. The first thing I would do is I would talk to the department heads in question and say, hey, first of all, is it clear what I reported in the flash report? Do you see this in your numbers as well? And then second, how can I help you with figuring out, what's going on? Can I run a quick analysis? Do you need additional data? So it's important that the the task, the responsibility of figuring out what's going on is with the budget owner, right? Is with the cross-functional team. But we as the finance business partner should play a big role in helping them figure out what's going on ideally through our analysis, through giving them the data that they need. And then you have a you're in close communication with your business partners. And then when they figure out what's going on, you can start putting that together in that performance review deck in those story slides. And then the last thing that's also very important I didn't mention is share back what you put in those slides with your business partner, with the department head, just to make sure that they're not being surprised or being called out in front of others by something that they weren't aware of. And that's usually how the process works.
Cool, Christian, thank you so much. There is a brief question actually addressed to me, but more than happy to do that in a follow-up session. Julio, as a CEO of a company providing this type of product, how do you implement these practices in your company? And hey, obviously we use extensively the product, but also learn from the best, like Christian, and have this spirit of constant improvement, right? So we follow a lot of operational metrics and leading indicators. That is critical. We share pre-reads 48 hours in advance. It is assumed that you've read it, and if you haven't read it, you have no right to open your mouth, right? And this is the working standard. So there are a number of best practices that Christian has been highlighting here that we embrace. There is always room for improvement. So we are in the path, right? Like anybody else. But definitely technology, obviously, and you might think I'm a bit biased, and maybe I am, but technology is obviously a game changer in our processes and operational standards. There was a great question here, Christian, for you. I think it's two questions coupled together, probably. How much financial and operational detail is too much? And how do you ensure you have enough insights? And then Patricia is also asking, how do you identify what information you should include in your leading indicators? Where do you draw this line? And you've touched that a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, those are great questions. So you also want to avoid analysis paralysis, right? You don't want to just run around finding a million metrics and then really not knowing the forest for the trees. The rule of thumb I give people is if you get to a point where you can make 1 to 3 concrete recommendations, suggested next steps for the company based on your analysis, then you found the true root cause, and then you can stop the analysis. If there are a million things that the company could be doing, then you're not there, right? So for example, if you say, well, we missed our target for leads, because we miss our target because we don't have enough leads. That's not a root cause, because there could be a million things why you don't have enough leads. But if you say, well, we recently redid our website, and based on the initial analysis, it looks like the conversion rates dropped since we changed the website and all the marketing copy there. Now you have a true insight that you can do something with. So that's how I would approach this. And in terms of how do you identify those leading indicators, that's where your understanding of the business comes in. That's where you reap the benefits of joining meetings with your business partners on a regular basis, where maybe all you do is listen, right? To really understand what are the challenges, how do strategies translate to tactics? Now, that's always a really good thing to check is, do you understand not just what the strategies are, but how we are trying to achieve them? Because then the tactics usually point to those operational metrics immediately, and then you can make the connection.
Kristen, thank you so much. I was scanning, trying to squeeze in, some of the questions that we haven't tackled. Let me try to go for one that Brian posed. How would you adapt this flash review structure to a company that is struggling with a lengthy close? For instance, closing on the 15th of the month.
Yeah, so we talked about this already a little bit about don't feel boxed in thinking, okay, there needs to be one huge, perfect flash report. It's okay to share information before the close is done if you have a lengthy close, if you caveat it, right? If you, for example, you may know that sales are 90% done. There may be a few manual journal entries I still have to do, but it's 90% there. It's okay to share it, because 90% is often enough to start identifying the issues and for people to start working on these issues. Because you want to make sure that the different departments have enough time to figure out what went wrong or what went surprisingly very well, right? Which, of course, also important. And the more time you give them, the better, even if that means that you're not sharing perfectly reconciled data, as long as you're clear about that.
Christian, thank you so much. I would add that in our experience, very clearly, timely insights and reporting outperforms accuracy, right? So it doesn't really matter like the last detail. So 80-20, like you want to show the insight that guides to and prompts better performance instead of, everything rounded to the cent, but hey, too late and nobody can action anything.
Right.
Cool. We are on time, unfortunately, Christian, once more, running out of time, but it was so amazing to have you here. This was, again, the second of the 3 master classes with you. It's been a blast. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the insightful session. Always a blast. And we cannot wait to go and do the 3rd masterclass with you and continue learning from the wisest. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Julio. Really appreciated it. One of my favorite topics to talk about, reporting. So yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks a lot to everyone here for being so engaged and actively participating throughout. Made it also a lot more fun for me. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Christian. Next one is going to be in a month time exactly on the 27th March. So cannot wait for that one. Thank you, everyone.